Members of the press, this is the second national dialogue conference that we are having as civil society and stakeholders that partner with us to ensure that as a country we prepare ourselves adequately to have free, fair, and peaceful elections in our country. And the last conference we had was in June, and we've been taking stock of happenings until the culmination of this national dialogue conference. So the Elections Observation Group, ELOG, and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, in partnership with civil society partners, faith-based organizations, members of the public, as well as duty bearers involved in the electoral process, convened the second National Dialogue Conference on the 16th and 17th of December 2021 at the Bomas of Kenya, Nairobi, to deliberate on the state of the electoral preparedness ahead of next year's general elections. As we appreciate the progress made thus far by the various electoral duty bearers in readiness for the upcoming elections, we acknowledge that there are outstanding critical issues that must be addressed if the elections are to be truly credible, peaceful, free, and fair. And in view of all this, what comes to the fore is the administration and management of elections, where we know constitutionally the body that is mandated to do this work is the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC. IEBC operates on a calendar that Kenyans must be aware of, must know in terms of its preparedness until the 9th of August 2022, given the events that will be taking place within the electoral cycle.
Thank you. I will continue. Apathy towards the electoral processes. Voter apathy remains a key challenge that could threaten their participation, judging by the recently concluded Enhanced Continuous Voter Registration Exercise, ECVR. Out of the targeted 6 million voters, IEBC managed only 1,519,294, which translates to a paltry 25% of the target. Political party processes. Now, political parties remain the dominant entities that have vehicles for representation in Kenya. However, they still face a number of challenges that put to doubt their capacity and level of preparedness ahead of the elections, especially party primaries. This is evidenced by the recent report by the IEBC that showed a majority of political parties are struggling to comply with the directive on the nomination rules. The absence of strong party systems risks disenfranchising special interest groups such as minorities, persons living with disability, youth, and women. While a number of political parties have put in place structures to handle internal disputes, it was observed that some are yet to establish such structures, and where they exist, they are centralized, thus leaving out some members. For the diaspora vote. Though there have been efforts to include more diaspora voters in the electoral process, 30% of the potential voters residing outside the Kenyan borders remain unregistered. The import of this is that about 4 million voters are likely to be locked out of the 2022 general elections. Legal reforms. There are pending legal framework reforms that remain a major issue ahead of the 2022 elections. Critical legislation premised on the IEBC post-2017 evaluation report are yet to be enacted and adopted. This is further coupled with the numerous legislative reforms with a direct bearing on elections being fronted by various members of parliament and committees. The challenges experienced in the 2017 elections are yet to be remedied legislative-wise. This includes the following: the Political Parties Act Amendment Bill, Special Interest Groups Amendment Bill, and the regulatory framework around results transmission, and the two-thirds gender bill that Kenya is yet to legislate upon. The country has also witnessed a significant rise in illegal political campaigns, with different political outfits being formed and divisive narratives being propagated. Today, Kenyans are being balkanized into perceived political camps that are mutually exclusive. The IEBC has not yet declared the official campaign period, and therefore, those participating in such are committing an electoral offense. As political parties' activities intensify, intolerance, violence, hate speech, incitement, misinformation, and disinformation are increasing. Pockets of violence have been witnessed in a few areas in the country, with the possibility of new hotspots emerging. Misinformation and disinformation, especially on online platforms, is also on the rise. If left unchecked, this could adversely affect the stability and peace needed during the elections. 8, leadership and integrity in elective positions. We note a mechanism to enforce compliance of Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity has not yet been established. Consequently, candidates with unresolved ethical issues continue to express interest to vie for general elections in Kenya. On security of IEBC officials and Kenyans, we have noted various concerns, especially based on previous elections. Gender-based violence has been reported in recent political meetings, especially harassment of women. We are also having mishandling of journalists that has been reported, and this expresses concerns to the freedom of expression during this period. Human rights defenders and election monitors have also expressed safety concerns, including negative profiling and threats to their work.
Following those observations, we are therefore making the following recommendations. On elections management and administration, we urge that to address the challenges in elections management and administration, IEBC must ensure full implementation of the elections operations plan in a consultative process. IEBC should also address the information gaps by having a sensitive and robust communication department. To address apathy towards the electoral process, we have recommended the following to be undertaken. IEBC needs to revise its communication strategy, intensify and localize its communication channels beyond Nairobi as it engages members of the public and stakeholders so as to enhance public trust. Systematic and targeted voter education strategies for the youth and other special interest groups will go a long way in remedying voter apathy, especially among the youth, particularly registration ahead of January's mass voter registration process. On political party preparedness, we hold that IEBC ensures that all political parties comply with the stipulated nomination rules and other relevant electoral laws. Political parties take practical steps to mainstream inter- and intra-party democracy, including institutionalizing their internal dispute resolution mechanisms. Political parties must use their own membership lists while conducting their party primaries. Additionally, political parties must ensure transparency in the management of the party membership register. We also ask that political parties adhere to the rule of law and promote engagement and sensitization of special interest groups at the grassroots level so as to create a level playing field for the aspirants. On challenges with the diaspora voters in exercising their electoral rights, we are urging the IEBC to take necessary legal and administrative measures to enfranchise the Kenyans living in the diaspora, which include adoption of easier methods of establishing residency during voter registration and providing mobile registration centers in the diaspora. IBC should also consider adopting technological and administrative measures to ensure that aspirants in the diaspora are cleared without having to travel. In order to check and regulate the use of money in the forthcoming elections, we recommend the following: judicial intervention to compel candidates and political parties to make public campaign donations and spending, full implementation of the Election Campaign Finance Act of 2013, especially the sections that do not necessarily require regulations or guidelines, support from the relevant government agencies with oversight for election campaign financing, and citizen vetting of political parties and candidates in promoting transparency and accountability in the use of resources and decampaigning the use of big money in the upcoming elections. In regard to illegal early campaigns and political intolerance, hate speech, incitement, and misinformation, we ask IBC to strictly enforce adherence to the legal timeline of political campaigns. We demand that NCIC intensifies their monitoring of cases of hate speech and incitement. We demand that leaders exercise political restraint, sobriety, and civic responsibility in their public utterances and meetings. And we urge all members of the public and political leaders to adhere to the laid down COVID-19 containment protocols, and those found to be violating and flouting these guidelines should be held accountable and necessary action taken against them. On leadership and integrity, we are urging Kenyans to be more proactive as we head to the 2022 general elections by rejecting individuals seeking public office that have been convicted or have pending corruption and economic crime cases, and those who have acted in breach of the leadership and integrity tenets as enshrined in the Constitution. We ask Kenyans to condemn and reject political parties that nominate tainted individuals.
I think it should be stated for the record that the involvement of the civil CSS or ministers, as the case was before, is an issue that has dominated our electoral process, I think, as old as the first multi-party elections that we had. And in a principle, if we are to consider issues of best practices, ideally, ministries and civil servants, including CSS, should actually remain neutral and impartial to the electoral process. That is a cardinal benchmark or best practice in the electoral process. But the problem with the country is that this issue has been canvassed variously. And I think as it is, there is a High Court judgment, I think lodged either between 2013 or in 2017, that that suggested that there was, in terms of political rights and civil liberties, there was nothing abnormal in CSS participating in the electoral process. But the truth of the matter is, and if we are to cite the electoral best practices, ideally the civil servants, given the very nature of their offices, should support should remain neutral and impartial to the electoral process without expressing any particular preference in the electoral process.
Thank you, Felix. Mule, if there is any comment?
So, the elections security is very important in the upcoming general elections, and we urge that the National Police Service and the IEBC to train new police officers on their role as election officials because they will be participating for the first time in the 2022 general elections. The IEBC and the National Police Service to provide clarity on the Election Security Command Center so that we know the police officers under the command of the IEBC and those ones that are under the jurisdiction of the OCSs and the OCPDs. We ask the IEBC and the National Police Service to provide security in campaign venues to avert cases of violence against women, because women bear the brunt of insecurity during elections. The National Police Service to prioritize protection of the human rights defenders, election observers, and journalists as critical electoral actors, because Kenyans depend on them for information and accuracy of fact-finding. Then the safety of the ballot papers and the technology systems in use should be approachable and accessible to all Kenyans without discrimination. Then regulation of political gatherings and meetings should be consistent with COVID-19 guidelines and promotion of human rights without any discrimination. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the elections are a celebration of fundamental human rights, and as such, all relevant duty bearers should take practical steps within the confines of the law to ensure that political rights are promoted, protected, and fulfilled. We shall be engaging these actors in the coming days to address some of these issues we have raised and update the members of the public. Here are the bombers of Kenya. Gathered organizations are the Transparency International Kenya, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, CMD Kenya, the Elections Observation Group, ELOC, Uzalendo Trust, Protection International Africa, the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, CRECO, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the Legal Resources Foundation, the Center for Minority Rights Development, SEMIRIGHT, the Conference Catholic Bishops, the Social Conscious Initiative, the Women Defenders Hub, the Correspondents Association, and Development through Media.
Sema tumemaliza hii press conference. Asanteni sana.
Asante.
Asante.